It was a quiet day. The sky was clear, the air crisp, and the world was going about its usual routine until the silence shattered. A distant hum, low and vibrating, rumbled through the ground, unnoticed by most. Then, a flash of light, brilliant and intense, flared across the sky. No one could have anticipated it. The first report came through Earth's deep space surveillance network. Unidentified object approaching Earth at near-light speed, the technician had said, her voice sharp and frantic. The message was automatically flagged for escalation, but it was still treated as a curiosity rather than a threat. That was until the object slowed. The object wasn't one. It was thousands. In an instant, Earth was plunged into a state of chaos. A massive fleet of alien ships appeared, dark and menacing against the backdrop of space. From the surface, it looked like a storm of black specks against the stars. Each ship was a towering monolith, their hulls reflecting the light from distant suns, pulsing with a strange, eerie energy. They hovered in the Earth's atmosphere, casting shadows over major cities. Commander Elias Kane was in his office at the United Earth Command when the news broke. His eyes scanned the screen in disbelief. A fleet of this size should have taken days to detect. Instead, it had appeared within mere seconds. "Sir, the Zythar fleet has entered our atmosphere," said Lieutenant Clark, her voice tight. It looks like an invasion." Kane stood up slowly, his mind racing. The Zythar, a name they had only heard in rumors and speculations. No one had expected them to strike Earth, and certainly not without warning. The world had always prepared for distant, faceless threats, an asteroid, a rogue planet, even an invasion from space, but never this. "Prepare the fleet," Kane said, his voice calm but laced with an edge of urgency. "Deploy our best interceptors and activate the defense systems. Give me a direct line to the Council." He didn't need to wait long before the call connected. "Commander," said General Hawk, his face appearing on the screen, stern and composed. "I assume you're aware of the situation?" "I am," Kane replied. "What's our status?" "Half of our defense systems are offline," Hawk admitted. "This fleet is far larger than anything we've encountered. We don't know their capabilities, but they're aggressive. Our outer perimeter stations are being overrun." Kane exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. "Understood. I need to know how quickly we can mobilize a counterattack. We have 30 minutes, maybe less. But it's going to take everything we have." The weight of the situation pressed on him. He could feel the tension building. Everything depended on these next few moments. The Zythar were not like the theoretical enemies Earth had prepared for. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't negotiate. A message came through the comms, breaking the silence. "Unidentified fleet. Earth surrender is demanded within 60 minutes or face total destruction." The coldness of the voice left an icy chill in the room. The aliens weren't asking, they were demanding. Earth had just become a target, but the question remained. Why? Kane's thoughts shifted to his team. He had to ensure they were ready. "Lieutenant Clark, get our interceptors in the air and send the emergency alerts to all major cities. We need a full evacuation protocol in place. Get our best engineers on fixing those defense grids." "Understood, sir," Clark replied, already moving to execute the orders. Kane didn't have time to think about the consequences of their actions, only the next steps. He rushed down the hallway to the command center, his boots echoing against the metal floors. There was a controlled chaos in the air, officers rushing to their stations, technicians working at terminals, and screens flashing urgent updates. "Commander," said Captain Marek, his eyes fixed on a large screen showing live satellite images of the Zythar fleet. "We've detected their primary energy signatures. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. These ships, they appear to be using some form of cloaking technology." Kane's gaze hardened. "How do we fight something we can't even see?" Marek's face was drawn. "We're going to have to find another way to combat them. Their tech is far ahead of ours, but we have our own strengths. We need to use Earth's unpredictability. They won't know what hit them." The words felt hollow in Kane's ears, but he forced them to sink in. Earth's unpredictability, its creativity, its resilience. had to be enough. A sudden explosion rocked the building, shaking the walls. A wave of shock reverberated through the command center, followed by a low rumbling as the ground quaked. The Zythar had begun their bombardment. The first strike wasn't aimed at military targets. It was at civilian centers, hitting major cities like New York, London, and Tokyo. The aliens seemed to have no concern for strategic military importance. They wanted to make a statement. "Shields up," Kane ordered, his voice cutting through the panic. "We need to act fast. Give me a line to Earth's major cities. Inform them that evacuation is a priority." The team sprang into action, the atmosphere thick with urgency. Kane's mind raced. The aliens were not just attacking, they were testing, and they were succeeding. Earth's best efforts had not prepared them for this kind of threat. As the hours passed, Earth's defense systems began to sputter back to life. Some satellites launched into space, engaging the alien ships in combat. But it was clear, Earth's military might was no match for the overwhelming size and advanced weaponry of the Zythar fleet. "We can't keep this up," Captain Marek said grimly, watching the chaos unfold on the screen. Kane clenched his jaw. "No, but we can outlast them. We have one advantage they don't. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for our home." The Zythar underestimated the humans they sought to destroy. That was their first mistake, and Kane would make sure it would be their last. This chapter sets the stage for the unexpected battle, capturing the urgency and shock of humanity's sudden confrontation with a superior alien force. The tension is high, and Earth's response is far from conventional, fueled by desperation and determination. The devastation of the initial assault had left the world reeling. Earth's once proud cities were in ruins, buildings reduced to rubble by the merciless bombardment of the Zythar fleet. Major metropolitan areas, New York, London, Tokyo, lay in tatters, their people scattered in confusion. Earth's military had responded as best as it could, but the sheer size and technology of the alien fleet overwhelmed them. Humanity had never faced anything like this. Commander Elias Kane knew one thing for certain. Their survival depended on how quickly they could adapt. Kane sat in the command center, his fingers pressing against his temples as he tried to process the magnitude of the situation. A map of the globe flickered before him on the screen, dotted with red markers indicating hotspots. The Zythar had already taken out key military installations and communication hubs. But Kane's mind wasn't on the immediate loss. It was on the long game. "Commander," said Lieutenant Clark, her voice tinged with urgency as she entered the room. "We've just received word from the Council. They're calling for a full-scale retreat." Kane looked up, meeting her gaze. "Retreat? And give them the Earth without a fight?" "We don't have the firepower to push them back, sir," Clark replied, her face pale. "The Zythar shields are impenetrable, and their weapons, well, they're unlike anything we've ever seen. A retreat might be our only option." For a moment, Kane said nothing. He stared at the screen, the overwhelming numbers of Zythar ships darkening the sky. The aliens were scattered in a loose formation, seemingly content to let Earth's defenses crumble before them. "No," he said, his voice steady but resolute. "Retreat isn't an option. Not while there's still breath in our lungs." Clark raised an eyebrow. "Then what do you propose we do?" "We fight back," Kane said, his voice hardening. "But not with conventional methods. We're not going to win this war by playing their game." He turned his attention to the broader problem at hand. How to organize Earth's defenses when the alien threat was so far ahead of them technologically. There was no room for error, no time for hesitation. Humanity needed to rely on its strengths, its unpredictability, its resilience, and most importantly, its ingenuity. Kane turned to his team of officers, who had gathered around a large holographic table. "I need every available unit to start thinking outside the box. Our primary goal is survival, but we also need to slow the Zythar down. Guerrilla warfare, sabotage, anything we can do to disrupt their progress." Captain Marek, a battle-hardened officer, spoke up. "Sir, we've already initiated guerrilla tactics in the cities, but the Zythar are adapting faster than we expected. They're using some form of adaptive shielding that nullifies most of our direct attacks. We can't let that stop us," Kane replied. We need to hit them where it hurts. Their fleet may be unbeatable in a head-to-head fight, but we have an advantage they don't. Earth is full of unpredictable terrain and urban environments. They don't know how to fight in a world like ours. That's our edge. Kane's plan was clear. They would abandon the idea of a direct confrontation with the alien fleet. Instead, they would use Earth's natural geography to their advantage. Cities would become traps, mountains would serve as hiding spots, and forests would be the perfect locations for ambushes. The Zythar, who had come expecting an easy conquest, would be forced to engage on Earth's terms. Dr. Aria Wells, the head of Earth's most advanced scientific team, approached the table with a data tablet in hand. Commander, she said, we've been working on a prototype weapon that could potentially disable their energy shields. It's not a silver bullet, but it might buy us some time. Kane's eyes flickered to her. How soon can we deploy it? We've only just finished the first round of tests, but it's working. The shield disruptor uses a frequency that interferes with their shielding tech. If we can get close enough, we can launch it from one of our satellites. Then that's where we start, Kane decided. Marek, you're in charge of getting that weapon into the sky. We'll need to be smart about this. Every move counts. Marek nodded, already organizing his team to implement the plan. But just as Kane began to feel a flicker of hope, a report came through the comms that made his stomach sink. Commander, said Lieutenant Clark, her voice trembling, the Zythar have launched a second wave of attacks. This time, they're targeting our communication satellites. If they succeed, we'll be completely blind. Kane's heart raced. If the aliens took out Earth's communication network, they would be able to isolate each region, making it nearly impossible to coordinate a global response. The thought of it alone was enough to fracture the unity that had begun to form. Then we stop them before they get the chance, Kane said firmly. Clark, I want every available unit in the air. We can't let them knock out our satellites. Get the fleet to intercept. And someone give me Dr. Wells. We need to accelerate the development of that weapon. As the minutes passed, the chaos in the command center intensified. Soldiers and engineers raced from one station to the next, carrying out orders without hesitation. The coordination was seamless, despite the overwhelming odds. The human spirit, resilient, creative, and relentless, was beginning to show its strength. Kane stood before the command center's central display, watching as Earth's military forces attempted to intercept the alien assault. Fighters launched into the sky, meeting the incoming wave of alien ships head-on. Some of them were shot down immediately, their blazing wrecks falling to Earth like meteors. Others, however, managed to slip past the Zythar ships and reach their target, the satellites. How are we doing? Kane asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Not good, sir, replied Captain Marek. The aliens are targeting our launchers, and we're not getting through their shields. It's like they know exactly what we're trying to do. Kane's jaw clenched. He knew this was a test, but it wasn't just a test of military might. It was a test of Earth's character. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their very survival. And no matter how technologically advanced the Zythar were, they couldn't have prepared for one thing: humanity's will to fight. As the battle raged on, Commander Kane stood at the helm, unyielding in his belief that Earth could still win. The alien fleet may have had superior technology, but they had underestimated one thing. Earth wasn't just another planet. It was humanity's home, and they would defend it to the last breath. This chapter delves into humanity's response to the alien threat, shifting the focus from overwhelming force to tactical ingenuity. Earth may be losing the battle, but its spirit and creativity are beginning to shine through. The story of Earth's fight for survival has only just begun. The battlefield was a mess of chaos and destruction, but for Commander Elias Kane, the battle had only just begun. After the alien fleet had launched its initial waves of attacks, humanity was left with a scarred planet and a fractured military. But it wasn't the damage that concerned him now. It was the future. How long could they keep this up? How long could they hold back an invasion that seemed all but unstoppable? But in the midst of the relentless bombardment, something unexpected happened. Humanity began to adapt. The first real sign of progress came late into the night. It started with a single transmission from one of Earth's most remote military bases deep within the Arctic. A team of engineers, working frantically for days, had successfully calibrated the new shield disruptor weapon that Dr. Wells had developed. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to make a difference. "We've got a shot," Commander Lieutenant Clark said over the comms, breaking the heavy silence in the command center. "We got the disruptor online and ready to fire from the satellite. The question now is, will it work?" Kane's grip tightened on the edge of the table as he watched the satellite network map flash on the screen. If this failed, they would lose all hope of disabling the Zythar's overwhelming shield technology. The disruptor had been their only chance at gaining the upper hand. "We'll know soon enough," Kane said, his voice unwavering. "Fire when ready." The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone, engineers, strategists, soldiers, stood in silent anticipation. The seconds dragged on like hours. Finally, the notification popped up on the screen. A blip signaled the disruptor had been fired. The room went still. "Impact in 3, 2, 1, Clark called out. A bright flash of light erupted on the screen. It was the result Kane had been hoping for, a pulse shot through the sky, hitting one of the Zythar ships directly in the center of its shield. The energy barrier flickered and then collapsed in a violent burst of static. Kane leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as the impact reverberated across the alien fleet. For a brief moment, the Zythar seemed disoriented. Their ships faltered, as if unsure of how to respond. "It worked," Dr. Wells said, her voice full of disbelief and excitement. "The shield was temporarily disabled. They're vulnerable. Get all available units ready for a counterattack," Kane ordered. "We've got a narrow window. Let's hit them hard." Within moments, Earth's forces mobilized. Fighter jets streaked across the sky, while ground forces moved swiftly to the alien-held areas. For the first time in days, there was hope. But it wasn't just the disruptor that had shifted the tide. The humans had learned from their earlier mistakes. They had used the chaos of the Zythar fleet's confusion to launch a new strategy, one that took full advantage of Earth's rugged terrain and unpredictable environments. "Commander, the Zythar are beginning to adjust," Captain Marek said, his voice tinged with concern. "They're reinforcing their ships and recalibrating their shields. We'll have to move fast if we want to maintain the advantage." Kane didn't hesitate. "Move the units into position. Don't let them regroup." The ground shook as fighter jets fired their missiles, each shot aimed with precision at the exposed sections of the alien fleet. On the ground, resistance groups began to make their move. Earth's forces had found ways to strike the Zythar in places they hadn't anticipated. Cities turned into war zones, mountains becoming deadly traps, and forests filled with ambushes. The Zythar were strong, but they were now fighting in an unfamiliar environment, one where Earth's fighters were more at home. As the battle raged on, Kane stood at the command center, eyes fixed on the screen. Every piece of data, every report came in faster than he could process. But for the first time, it felt like they were making progress. "Status report," Kane barked. "Sir, we've neutralized 3 of their ships," Marek replied, his voice steady, but his face betraying a hint of surprise. "Their formations are breaking apart. The Zythar are starting to retreat." Kane's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Were they actually pushing the alien invaders back? "It's not over," Kane warned. "This is just the beginning. We need to keep the pressure on them. No mercy." As if to emphasize his words, a new transmission came through. It was from Earth's remaining military satellites, and the data was worrying. "Commander," Clark's voice crackled over the comms, "the Zythar have just activated a secondary wave. They're deploying reinforcements, larger ships, more weapons. We need to brace for an all-out assault." Kane's stomach sank. Just when they thought they had gained the upper hand, the Zythar were ready to turn the tables. The size of the incoming wave was staggering, but Kane wasn't about to let the Zythar regain control. "Prepare the next phase of our plan," he ordered. "Deploy the fleet to intercept. We bought ourselves time, now let's make it count." The command center buzzed with activity as Earth's forces shifted from defense to offense. Soldiers were deployed to key positions, communication teams scrambled to synchronize efforts, and engineers worked tirelessly to make sure the shield disruptor could be fired again. Dr. Wells and her team had managed to tweak the disruptor to fire in a more focused, concentrated burst, which meant they could potentially disable entire sections of the Zythar fleet if given the opportunity. But they had to move fast. Time was running out. "This is it," Kane said, his voice tight as he gave the order. "Get that disruptor back in the sky. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The next few minutes were a blur of action. The sky above Earth was filled with fire and smoke as the battle intensified. Fighter jets screamed through the air, dodging enemy fire as they launched missiles at the advancing alien ships. On the ground, human resistance groups had begun setting up traps and sabotage operations, hitting the Zythar where they least expected. Then, Kane's eyes locked onto the screen once again. The disruptor had been successfully reactivated and was now aimed directly at the heart of the Zythar fleet. Earth's fighters had done their part. The time to strike was now. "Fire," Kane commanded. The room fell silent as the disruptor launched. A brilliant beam of light shot from the satellite, cutting through the dark expanse of space. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Zythar fleet, their ships, their weapons, all of it stopped. And then, as the beam hit its target, the alien shield shattered. The first wave of Zythar ships crumpled, their once impenetrable shields dissipating into nothingness. One after another, their ships fell from the sky, their energy sources extinguished in moments. "Yes," Clark shouted, her voice filled with triumph. But Kane knew better than to celebrate too soon. There were still many more ships to destroy, many more battles to fight. The war was far from over. "We've won a battle," Kane said quietly, his gaze unwavering. "But the war is just beginning." And with that, Commander Kane led humanity into the next phase of their fight for survival. The Zythar might have underestimated Earth, but they were about to learn a painful lesson. Humanity was not just a planet to be conquered. It was a force to be reckoned with. The war had taken a brutal toll on Earth. Buildings lay in ruins, cities had become desolate landscapes, and the air was thick with the scent of smoke. Yet, amidst the devastation, humanity's resolve had never been stronger. Commander Elias Kane stood at the front lines of a war that had shaped the very future of his species. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a symbol of Earth's defiance. For weeks, the alien Zythar forces had battered humanity with waves of overwhelming power. Their ships, their weapons, their advanced technologies, all seemed insurmountable. But every strike had only forged humanity into a stronger, more united force. Now, at long last, they had reached the final chapter of this fight. The command center buzzed with activity as Kane stood before the map, his eyes scanning the coordinates of the remaining Zythar ships. Their fleet had been decimated, but the enemy's reinforcements had arrived in full force. Thousands of ships, now fully operational, were making their final assault on Earth's last stronghold. The Zythar were determined to break humanity once and for all. "This is it," Lieutenant Clark said as she entered the room, her expression grim. "We've got one last chance to end this." Kane turned to face her, his face hardening. "We've been saying that for weeks. How much longer can we last? Every day, they get stronger. Every day, more lives are lost." Clark hesitated, but then met his gaze. "This is our final strike. If we can't finish them off now, Earth's gone." Kane's fingers traced the map on the holographic table. The Zythar's largest fleet was heading toward Earth's capital. With their superior firepower and numbers, it seemed impossible to stop them. But Kane knew one thing. Humanity never gave up, no matter how dire the situation. "We have one shot at this," Kane muttered, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of the responsibility. "All forces must converge. The Zythar are coming for our last bastion, and we will meet them head-on." The battle ahead would be unlike anything they had faced before. With the shield disruptors now an integral part of their strategy, the humans had a fighting chance. But the Zythar were not known for their restraint, and they would not go down without a fight. Earth's fighters had to make every move count. The city was eerily quiet as Kane and his team made their way to the command center's underground bunker. Above them, the sky was blackened by the looming shadows of the enemy fleet. The last of Earth's military forces were assembled, waiting for the command to move. Captain Marek stood beside Kane, his expression taut with focus. "Commander, we've got the satellite network in place. The disruptors are ready to fire. But I have to warn you, we can't maintain these shields for long. Once we deploy the final strike, we'll be left vulnerable." Kane nodded, understanding the stakes. "We don't need to hold forever, just long enough to get the job done. Once the Zythar lose their momentum, we hit them hard. No mercy." A loud thrum echoed across the bunker as the warplanes powered up, their engines roaring to life. The ground beneath them vibrated as Earth's final fleet took off. They were ready to face the Zythar, but even now, doubt lingered at the edges of Kane's mind. The question he couldn't shake was whether Earth could really win this war, or if they were simply delaying the inevitable. A voice crackled over the comms. "Commander Kane, all units are in position. The disruptors are locked onto their targets. The Zythar are closing in fast. We're ready." Kane looked up at the large display screen in front of him. The enemy ships were fast approaching, their massive, gleaming forms like shadows of death descending toward Earth. His heart pounded, but he held his breath, waiting for the signal. "Now," Kane ordered, his voice unwavering. The world seemed to hold still as the satellites above Earth released their concentrated beams of energy, disrupting the Zythar fleet's shields one final time. Kane's eyes were fixed on the screen as the first wave of ships began to break apart, their advanced technology unable to withstand the force of Earth's last, most powerful strike. The sky was lit with explosions, and the shockwaves rippled across the atmosphere. But the Zythar didn't go quietly. The remaining ships retaliated with an intensity that pushed Earth's forces to their limit. Laser beams cut through the sky, and explosions rocked the ground. Kane could feel the pressure mounting. This was the fight they had been building up to, Earth's final stand. "Push forward," Kane commanded, his voice rising over the chaos. "This is our home. We will fight for it." His words echoed through the comms, fueling the resolve of the soldiers below. The human forces surged forward, charging into the heart of the battle. The Zythar may have been technologically superior, but humanity was relentless. Every fighter, every soldier knew they were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of their children, their families, their species. Kane's comms buzzed again. "Commander, we've got multiple targets closing in. They're deploying ground units." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Not for long. Deploy the anti-ground teams now." The ground teams moved swiftly, taking out the Zythar infantry as they descended from the sky. For every Zythar soldier that hit the ground, 2 more were taken out by the relentless fire from Earth's forces. The Zythar may have been more numerous, but they were no match for humanity's sheer will to survive. As the final phase of the battle unfolded, Kane's thoughts turned back to Dr. Wells. Her work had been pivotal in leveling the playing field, and now it was her moment to shine. Kane's last message to her had been simple: do what you do best. The disruptors had cracked open the Zythar's defenses, but the battle was still far from over. Kane's only hope now rested on Wells' final project, a weapon capable of wiping out the heart of the Zythar fleet in one fell swoop. If it worked, it would end the war once and for all. If it failed, they would all be doomed. Kane's mind raced as he watched the fight unfold. The Zythar ships were slowly but surely being driven back, but their persistence was unnerving. He couldn't afford to lose focus now. The battle wasn't just a matter of technology, it was a matter of survival. His eyes scanned the skies once more, and that's when he saw it. A massive alien ship, larger than anything they had faced, began its descent toward Earth's capital. "That's the command ship," Marek said, his voice low. "It's our last chance. If we don't stop it now, we'll lose everything." Kane clenched his fists. "We don't have time to wait. Everyone prepare to engage." With one final push, Earth's forces launched their last assault. The battle raged on with a fury unmatched. But this time, Earth was no longer on the defensive. They were taking the fight to the Zythar, and this time they would win. The battlefield was unrecognizable. What was once Earth's capital had been reduced to a twisted mass of steel and ash. The alien warships loomed overhead like ominous clouds, their weapons flashing with deadly intent. Yet, amid the destruction, humanity stood defiant. This was the moment that would define their future. Commander Elias Kane watched as the final waves of Zythar's ships descended. Their massive, menacing forms cut through the smoke-filled sky. The situation had never been more dire. His heart raced, but his mind remained calm. They had come too far to lose now. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. This was their last chance. "Commander," Lieutenant Clark said, stepping up beside him. Her eyes were wide with worry, but her voice was steady. "The Zythar command ship is in position. If we don't hit it now, they'll wipe us out. This is it." Kane nodded grimly. The command ship was the heart of the Zythar fleet. If it was destroyed, the enemy would be left leaderless and disoriented, providing humanity with a slim but critical chance to win. Failure meant annihilation. Success could mean survival. He turned to the control panel in front of him. "Prepare the final strike," he ordered. The air around them hummed with tension. Across the comms, a voice crackled through. "Final strike initiated. All systems are go." "Commander, we're ready." Kane felt the heaviness of those words settle over him. There would be no turning back now. With one command, the fate of Earth would be sealed. A series of explosions rang out from the Zythar ships, their weapons lashing out at humanity's remaining defenses. The fighters from Earth's military flew with precision, dodging laser beams and plasma shots as they moved into position. But the Zythar command ship, the largest of them all, remained untouched in the center of the storm. It was the final obstacle standing between Earth and victory. Locking on target, Clark said, her fingers flying over the console. Just a few more seconds. Kane's eyes were fixed on the screen, watching the Zythar ship's massive silhouette growing larger as it approached. The seconds stretched into eternity. The world felt like it had come to a standstill. Then, a voice broke the silence. "Commander, we're getting interference," a technician called out, his voice tinged with panic. "Something's disrupting the signal. We can't get a clean lock." "Fix it." Kane snapped, his voice hard with urgency. Now, the tension was unbearable. The battlefield outside raged with relentless fury, but inside the command center, time seemed to slow. Kane gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white. His mind raced. They had one shot at this, and everything was riding on it. "We're losing them," the technician cried out, his hands shaking as he worked feverishly to regain control. "It's too late. The signal's been blocked." Kane's heart sank. They were so close. The final blow was within reach, but now it seemed just out of their grasp. His mind flashed back to the moment they had first learned of the Zythar threat, the years of preparation, the sacrifices of countless lives. It couldn't end here. Clark's voice broke through his thoughts. "Commander, wait. The satellite link is still intact. We can bypass the interference manually." Kane's eyes snapped back to her, his breath catching. "Ow!" Clark pulled up a set of controls on her screen, her fingers moving with expert precision. "We'll need to bypass the network relay. It's risky, but we can do it." "Do it. Now," Kane commanded. "We don't have time to waste." Clark nodded and moved quickly, typing in the necessary commands. The minutes felt like hours as the room held its breath. Outside, the skies burned with laser fire as both sides fought for control of the planet's future. Kane's grip tightened around the armrests, his eyes never leaving the screen. Every passing second could be their last. "Come on," Kane whispered, the tension threatening to break him. Finally, Clark's voice rang out, full of relief. "Locked on. We got the target. Fire." The command was simple, but it carried the weight of everything that had come before. Kane watched in anticipation as the weapon fired, a blinding light shooting from the satellite array. The beam cut through the air, slicing toward the Zythar command ship. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The beam struck the ship's hull with a deafening explosion. A brilliant flash of light erupted in the sky as the ship shuddered, the energy reverberating across the battlefield. Kane could barely comprehend what he was seeing. The enemy ship was crumbling, its outer layers disintegrating under the force of the blast. Direct hit, Clark shouted, her voice filled with disbelief. It's going down. The Zythar command ship began to spiral, its engines exploding in a cascade of sparks and debris. The remaining Zythar ships faltered, their coordination crumbling. The force that had once been an unstoppable wave of destruction was now in disarray. Kane exhaled slowly, his mind racing. It wasn't over yet, but the battle had just shifted in their favor. He stood and turned to the room. Now is our chance. Push forward, take them down. We finish this, once and for all. Outside, the remaining human forces surged forward. Earth's fighters, fueled by the energy of the final strike, fought with renewed determination. The Zythar ships were falling one by one, their technology and leadership in shambles. The remaining alien soldiers tried to regroup, but it was clear they no longer had the strength to continue. For the first time since the war began, Kane allowed himself to believe they might actually win. The tide had turned. Humanity had stood against an overwhelming force and emerged victorious. In the aftermath of the battle, the smoke and dust began to settle. The skies were still scarred, the remnants of the battle hanging in the air. Kane stood in front of the shattered remains of the command center, watching as Earth's forces secured the last of the alien invaders. We did it, Clark said, her voice soft but filled with a quiet triumph. Kane nodded, his expression unreadable. We did, but the cost was high. Looking around at the devastation, he could feel the weight of every life lost. The battle was won, but the war had come at a great price. Families had been torn apart, entire cities destroyed. And yet, as he stood there, Kane realized that Earth's greatest victory wasn't just the battle. They had proven, once and for all, that humanity could survive anything. With the enemy finally defeated, Kane turned to face the future. The road to recovery would be long, but Earth would rebuild. The scars of war would remain, but humanity's resilience would endure. We're not done yet, he muttered to himself. This is just the beginning. As the world began to heal, the story of Earth's unexpected victory spread across the galaxy. The Zythar had underestimated humanity, and they would never make that mistake again.